your house, you go to your boxes and flip them.
So we don't want grounding pads. Is that what he's... No grounding pads.
Unless you turn off the power. If you turn off the power, the grounding pads are good because they're stopping that pressure from getting in. But if your electricity is on and you have a grounding pad, you're turning yourself into a...
Oh, great.
On, like, unlocking your car, it'll kill the circuits to the bedroom. She was asking
How
about...
does it do that? I mean...
So it's just a remote relay that we wire in. We figure out what circuits are to the bedroom, to the kid's bedroom, to the router if you still have one, if you're still on board with Wi-Fi. Hopefully not. But then you hit this button and it clicks a relay and it shuts off the power to those circuits. So when you go to bed, you lay in bed, you're done, hit the button, it kills most of the power to the house.
Do I have to do the whole house, or can I just do my bedroom?
Just do your bedroom,
Can
right?
we
Again, so
an electrical circuit that the
because it's only
apartment's
extending
separate
out
from
about
us?
6 feet.
Oh no,
so
because he would figure it out if he tried to turn the light on.
yeah, so you have, it's like we have a little battery-powered flashlight by each of our beds if we need to get up.
Interesting. Okay.
But one thing to keep in mind, you could kill the circuit to your bedroom, but you might have the circuit above you. You might have circuits running next to you through the wall. The garage circuit is underneath here, so you need to test, and that's one of the things we'll do is we'll measure where the electric circuits are coming from, because it's really important to get good sleep, to not be sleeping in that electric field, because our cells are constantly being push-pull, vibrated, sit there and literally buzzing. And we can't consciously feel it unless you're more sensitive to it, but our cells can definitely feel it.
Okay. So, and I just want to reiterate, just so it's on video, so as far as kids playing on cell phones, always airplane mode, you don't even let your kids play on cell phones.
No, absolutely not.
They don't even touch it.
No, even the government regulations say that it's safe for adults, but it's not tested for kids.
Wow. So okay, so there's no safe amount of, not even been studied or anything like that.
No, we'll do some tests and I'll show you the levels of the phone, and you probably won't be there.
Okay.
It's probably the worst.
Okay, so cell phones are terrible. Yeah.
These guys are guinea pigs. They don't even know.
That's true.
This is all brand new.
Right. This is all right.
So even if they said, "Oh, it's safe," well, how do they know? We've only had
because we haven't done.
15 years, you know.
There's no longitudinal studies. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So.
And the problem is that until they prove that it's not harmful, they haven't proved that it's safe.
Right.
You know, we need to be precautionary. The problem is we're going to sacrifice a generation.
Yeah,
stuff.
exactly.
That's the sad thing about it. So at least for me and my family, me testing, I've seen it. I 100% know.
You're like,
see
no.
It every day.
Yeah.
Just like the lady I told you about the other day.
Yes.
So for my kids, it's absolutely not. It's not even a question. It's like basically handing them a meth pipe.
Yeah.
Or a cigarette.
Did you say meth pipe?
Yeah.
Oh.
So
cigarettes might take 20 years to kill you. I mean, obviously, meth pipe's going to do one a little faster.
Okay.
And a lot of the effects we're seeing from these RF are pretty instant, pretty fast.
Okay. Yeah. Alrighty.
So, jumping ahead here, but if we share a power breaker with our renters downstairs, the process of separating those into separate circuits, how...
So more than likely the circuit that's going to feed that is different than the circuit that's going to feed your bedroom over
Oh,
here.
I hope so. Okay.
Yeah, because generally a master bedroom will have its own circuit with the outlets and the lights. It'll be on one circuit. And then you'll have a circuit for your bathroom in here.
Okay.
You'll have a circuit for the upstairs, probably those two rooms, maybe that room are all on one.
Okay.
And so what we do is we go through and we'll turn the circuits on and off one at a time, and we'll see what affects.
Okay. So that's what we're going to do right now.
That's one of the things we're going to do. One of the tests we're going to do.
After our educational session.
There's a way to wire it up so
so
they can
like what we do,
we
we just power down our whole house. We live in a cabin and we have a wood burning stove, and so we just shut down the whole house. We just power everything.
So they're off the grid, but
yeah, it's almost like
because of what he knows, right?
Right, but we sleep amazing. Like we remember our dreams. We wake up refreshed.
Yeah.
And we don't need coffee in the morning anymore. It's life changing.
Yeah.
And so. And everyone sleeps good. No bedway, nothing.
I was going to say, I wonder if that's going to help Tennyson. Because he was colicky as a baby. And I remember Dr. Jeff Wright was like, switch off all of your power and see if that helped. He did, but I didn't believe it back then. So I didn't do anything. And so I dealt with a colicky baby for 12 months. Yeah. And he still wets his bed. He's almost 6. So I wonder if this will help him.
I did too until I was like 12.
You did? Okay.
Well, I always thought it was because he was such a
deep
I know,
sleeper.
I practiced his patterns, and we knew that he would wet before midnight.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's
Okay,
another
well,
story.
we can keep going.
He got better.
Yeah, because the thing is, your body doesn't fully go to sleep all the way.
Right.
Because it's agitated. It's a stressor. So we talked about the environmental stressors. That's definitely an environmental stressor.
Okay,
So much
alrighty.
stress in your body.
Alrighty.
Certainly. So that's electric fields,
Where's
okay?
my pen?
So again, electric fields come from the power lines, anything that has power on it, not necessarily using power.
So electric
If
fields,
switch could be
power
off,
lines.
you still have an electric field. It's just like the water in the faucet. Think of it just like that.
Okay.
And it also comes from the power line. So if you had power lines running through your backyard, you'd have an electric field that extends out. Instead of 6 feet like the low voltage, the higher the voltage, the further out the field is going to be.
Do you know how
Wow.
far out it tends to go with the big overhead lines?
It depends. So if you have the super high voltage, the high tension lines that go across country, those can go out a couple hundred yards.
Okay.
And-
Well, because
and they're
I mean, there is one not
There's one up the
too
mountain
far
there.
from us.
So typically the distribution lines that go between houses are 7.2 kilowatts or 13.8 kilowatts or kilovolts, and then those will extend out up to maybe 100 yards.
Okay.
So lines that are buried, how does that work?
So berries don't emit any electric field because any kind of shielding to ground will let the electrons go back. So the electrons go out, they hit ground, they're happy, they go back through the ground.
That's awesome. My neighbor
They
was
don't
always
emit, they only emit out through the
Never
air.
done.
So
Okay.
in a lot of commercial places and buildings, the code requires them to use the armored cable, which
Mhm.
has the metal around it and it's grounded.
Yeah.
You're not going to get electric fields off that.
So,
But-
oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sir.
I was going to say, so these older neighborhoods that have all the power lines like up in the air and you can see the power lines connecting to all the homes, those are
Yeah.
worse.
Yeah, so if you could envision it, you're going to see a circular field around the power lines that extend out maybe 50 yards, and
Yeah.
then that goes through a transformer, the little bucket-looking thing up there, and then it steps down to house voltage, and that circular realm is about 6 to 8 feet
Okay.
coming in, and so you'll see that field come into the house, and that same field, if you kind of envision it, every single wire has this circular field around it that's very strong at the point, and then mellows out to about nothing.
Okay. Alrighty.
All the wires in the whole house.
What
Okay.
about cell towers? What are they doing?
So that's different. That's radio frequency. So we'll get to that one. That's a different kind.
Is that 5G? Which I think has hit our area now.
Yes and no. But yes, now the 5G is
My phone
activated.
says 5G for reals.
You
It didn't
don't
used
hear.
to say for reals. What? Yeah.
So do we understand electric fields?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's
And it's
move on.
completely separate than all the rest. So now let's talk about magnetic fields. Magnetic fields are produced when there's actually current flowing. Okay, so we have an electric field, that outlet, we plug in an iron, we turn the iron on, it's drawing current. So now it's like going out to the faucet and turning it on. Now it's flowing, we're getting actual power coming through. So the more power and current that is flowing through the line, the bigger the magnetic field is going to be. And so the magnetic field that's created from current flowing is going in a circular motion. So we get a circular magnetic field going around the cable. And the more current that is going through it, the bigger the field is going to be. So it has nothing to do with voltage, it has to do with how much current. And that depends on how far it will extend out. So super high current, those high voltage lines, they can go up to a quarter mile sometimes. They can go really far if there's a lot of usage, a lot of current being drawn. The thing that saves us in the wiring of this home is that you have your positive line and you have the current traveling down the positive line. It goes to the light and it comes back on the white, the neutral, and it comes back to the source. So you have a magnetic field being produced in a circular motion this way from the hot, goes to the light, and it comes back and is being produced the other way. Those two fields will cancel each other out.
Cool.
So that's what saves us with the electrical wiring in the house. Otherwise, we'd have super high magnetic fields everywhere, and high magnetic fields is a big contributor to cancer. I see that all the time.
So wait,
That
so
makes
are all
sense.
homes are like that, or
Yep.
just some? Okay.
All homes are like that.
Okay.
Where you get a problem with a home is if they wired it incorrectly. So every circuit that's an individual circuit in the house by code must keep their neutrals next to the hot at all time and not connected to the neutral of another circuit. The reason is if you have two circuits that come into a box, so you have a light switch and you have a bunch of light outlets and you have two circuits in there. Say you decided, or whoever wired the house wired the two neutrals together. Now when you have your power coming from your hot from this circuit, it goes up to the lights and then it comes back to the neutral. instead of continuing to travel along with its hot pair to cancel, it splits, and now half the current goes on this neutral through its wiring path, and half the current goes through this neutral. So now you have a mismatch, and it's called a net current loss. So you have a mismatch of current flowing, and now you have created a magnetic field on this wire. You've also created a magnetic field on this wire.
Okay.
Because now they're not there to cancel each other out.
Okay.
Another scenario when you would get it is if you have some sort of a device, and inside the device there's some sort of a short from the neutral to the ground, and now the ground is providing a path back to physical ground, and the electrons are not taking the neutral back to the panel, they're taking the ground path back to the panel. Again, you'll have a magnetic field on the ground wire and on the neutral.
Okay.
So those two scenarios are pretty common. Another common scenario is water lines. So if you have all the people on the street are connected to the water, it's a metal water line. Code back in the day required you to do it, ground it to the water line. Now you put a stake in the ground, and it's grounded through the stake. But more than likely this house has it grounded to the water pipe, because they thought that's a really good grounding system, and it is, because it goes in the ground and it spreads out. The problem is, let's say your neighbor's neutral wire isn't connected correctly or starting to corrode, and it's not providing the path back to the sub panel. It can use the path of the ground to the water pipe, and it will go, and it will see your neutral's hooked up good. So it'll say, oh, let's travel through this water pipe into this house, through their panel, into their neutral. And that happens pretty common. In fact, there's always some sort of a misbalance between the neutral and the ground at the panel going back, if you're all connected to the water line and it's metal.
Okay.
And so we want to measure the water pipe coming in and make sure that we don't have any current flowing on that water pipe, because that's going to create a magnetic field, because there's no cancellation.
And that's what happened with Serene's old house, right?
Right.
That's
Did she
okay.
move? Did she have to?
Then she wanted to.
Yeah, they wanted to.
They
Okay.
found that there was a high level of magnetic field that was coming in on the water line,
Yeah.
which is
So there was
surprisingly
no way
pretty
to
common.
correct it?
Yeah, so what you do is you cut a chunk of the metal pipe out and you replace it with plastic PEX pipe, because plastic PEX will not conduct electricity.
Okay.
So now the power has to skip your house and go down to the next house.
Wow.
to go in.
So you're just
So
sharing
it's
that.
a buffer. So it's
What's
a
that?
buffer between
Mhm.
you and the rest of the
Oh,
neighborhood.
why, what does
Okay.
it do to
Wow.
it?
Well, it
Alrighty.
sends all of that.
Same
magnetic-
thing.
Oh,
Same
gosh.
thing can happen with your cable, with your telephone, with your gas, and certainly if you find a current on the gas, then we call the gas company in immediately, because that's a fire hazard.
Wow.
Big time.
Okay.
Because you could spark anytime you get current on the gas line. That's a big no-no.
Okay.
So
Water
all-
line, they don't care as much.
All this electrical and everything that you're talking about in the home building, they didn't do it for that reason. They did it, what, to prevent fires or something?
Prevent. So all the electrical code is to prevent shock and fire.
Okay.
Prevent fire, prevent shock. Now, a lot of the code does, as a consequence, is more healthier. But by having the neutrals not tied together. The reason that the code is not to have the neutrals tied together is because, say, you do have neutrals tied together, you're working on this circuit, but you killed the power to this one and not that one, and you have current flowing through the neutral. You go up to switch the light, the neutral should be dead. Now you grab this neutral, now you're a path back to ground, but you just shut that circuit off. But since the neutrals were tied together, now you have a shock hazard.
Great.
Does that make sense?
So
Yeah.
so our new homes, did you say they're better?
It
than
totally
the old
depends
ones?
on the electrician. But yes, new homes, as you go along, are a lot better. So back in the 40s, you have the old knob and tube wiring where it's just like you have, they pound it in the wall, and you got your positive here and your negative here, and it's just two lines that kind of run through. They're not together, so they're not canceling out. They're both acting like antennas. They're transmitting huge amounts of magnetic fields. So if you live in an older home with knob and tube, in fact, a lot of insurance companies won't insure you if you have knob and tube wiring.
Wow.
Take
You
it
have
out.
to rewire the home.
Because it's a huge fire hazard.
Wow.
Yeah, huge shock hazard too.
What homes were done, what years? Do you know?
It depends on the area. It depends on the codes in that area. It varies.
Pretty old.
Pretty old for
Yeah.
knob and tube.
And
Yeah.
down there.
I have no idea.
In the down.
But there is a lot of homes are older, you know, downtown Salt Lake area and downtown.
So in the Lower Dell, all those homes are like 100 years old.
Yeah.
And when I tested my friend's kids who lived down there,
Mhm.
all of them EMFs, like all of
Really?
them, like super high. And
What did you use to test?
the hair analysis.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
like they
Oh, wow.
all
So we
kept
tested
showing
it,
EMFs, and I was like, this is
yeah.
weird.
So we'll have to talk more about that when you say test for EMFs, because all these different things we're talking about are different, and they affect the body different, and like from a physics standpoint, they're actually different energies.
Oh, okay.
But
So
it's kind of all lumped into one thing by
Yeah,
people. They
yeah.
say EMFs or EMFs high. Well, for me as an engineer, it's, well, what do you mean?
Right.
You know,
Yeah, what are the
because,
details?
Yeah, there needs to be more specific.
Okay, we can talk about that later.
Okay.
Let's keep
So
So there's electric,
electric, magnetic. So let's talk a little bit more about magnetic, because there's things called point sources. So that's an individual point source of a magnetic field that radiates out. So when you get the kind of wiring error in the wall from neutrals tied together, or neutral to ground, or some sort of shorting, that the die-off rate from that is like 2 to 1. So as you get 2 feet away, it gets 2 feet. So the more distance you go, it's more of a linear draw. So when we have point sources, we're talking about fans, coils, the little, I call them wall warts. You plug them in and it adapts it to 12 volt, and you plug a USB into it. Those have little coils, little transformers in them, little copper coils. Like fans in the bathroom, those are really high. Anything that has a motor on it that spins is going to create a really high magnetic field right next to it. But as its field drops off, it's exponential. So instead of dividing it by 2, it's dividing it to the second. So it drops, or to the third, it drops off exponentially as you go. So the curve looks like this instead of like this.
pretty small field.
So right next to it, and we'll demonstrate this with some of the stuff, right next to it could be 100 milligauss, but you step away to here and it's only 4 milligauss, and then you go over here and it's nothing.
Okay.
Versus wiring might be 40, and then you come out 4 feet and it's only, you know, then it goes down to 60, it goes down to 40, and way out there it's 20. It lasts a lot longer.
Okay.
So, and that's just the nature of how the magnetic field is created,
Okay.
how it dies
Do
down.
you have electricity in your house?
I do.
Okay.
Only during
But
the day though.
we have an old school log custom cabin, and it has very little electricity because there's no wall cavity. It's all just
I
big
would have
logs.
to have
so.
electricity.
Did you build your house?
No, we bought it, and it took us a long time to find a house that
Oh.
met our specifications.
Yeah.
And that we could afford. So those are the two things that kind of had to mix.
Yeah.
But the old log home, it was a really good choice for us because it doesn't have a wall cavity, it didn't have any chemicals, it
Cool.
absorbs the water well.
Are you from Idaho or not?
Uh-huh. I grew up in Blackfoot area.
Okay.
So
I'm sure my dad was from.
that's the difference between electric fields and magnetic. So when you
He
talk
grew
about
up.
EMF, it's electromagnetic fields. That's the electro portion is the electric field,
And
and
the
then the magnetic field. So when you say electromagnetic fields, you're kind of lumping those
I am,
all
yeah.
together. But they're very separate, they're produced separate, and they have separate effects on the body. So magnetic fields, the nature of magnetic fields, you can't shield magnetic fields. So electric fields can be shielded with tinfoil, and that's where you get the whole tinfoil
That's- yeah.
theory concept. You can literally put tinfoil on that wall and ground it, and you'll have no electric field where you're sitting. Just-
Like tinfoil, really?
Yeah, and it will actually shield from high voltage power lines.
Although you would
Because all it needs is that electron just needs to hit something and have a path back to ground.
Yeah. So
And
we'd
it
need
has to
like
be grounded.
tinfoil everywhere, right?
You could to block the electric field, or you could wrap the wire in
Oh.
tinfoil, which is basically what shielded cable is.
Yeah.
And that's
Say,
why
don't
shielded
just
cable
shield
is
it.
used for data transmissions, because it blocks the electric field.
Mm-hmm.
Because the electric field will induce a current on a line,
Why?
cause interference.
Why don't they just build homes like that?
Because it's more expensive. You can absolutely have your electrician run it in shielded cable, for sure, but it's more expensive.
But totally worth
Can you
it.
remedy
Well,
it anyhow?
how
I know.
hard is
With
it
that?
to rerun shielded
Yeah.
cable throughout the whole house?
So expensive.
Well,
We'd have to
I mean,
pull out
we're
walls
talking
and stuff.
about, you have to pull out walls, you have to pull out the wire, it's very, very expensive.
We'd have to remodel the entire house.
Would your neighbor's house cause you problems?
So, electric field, 6 foot diameter, you're not gonna get anything from your neighbor on electric fields. Magnetic fields, if they have a huge mismatch, and that's one thing that we're gonna measure, is we're gonna see what's coming, and that's why we turn down everything, power down everything in this house, and we do a perimeter reading of electric, magnetic, and RF, because we wanna see what's contributing from the neighbors. So yes, your neighbors can
So
contribute.
her neighbors have a giant, what is that, a power station?
Oh, they put all of their They built a new house and it's enormous. They just put all this outdoor electricals, whatever they are, I don't know.
But it's new, so it's probably
Not much they can do with it.
probably well matched and everything, right? So not.
It's hard to say, without testing it and seeing. I get much more concerned about magnetic fields than I do electric fields. Magnetic fields you can't shield. I mean, nothing. They make this mu metal stuff, and it doesn't really shield it. What it does is kind of condenses the magnetic fields within it. So it has to be parallel to the field. So as the electric fields or magnetic fields are coming around, they'll kind of concentrate on this metal, and then you spit back out. So if you have a circular field and you put mu metal here, it's going to hit the metal and going to go through it, but it's not. You don't put it up and it doesn't just block it. Magnetic fields go through everything. That's basically what our Earth is, a static magnetic field. We have a north and a south pole, and that's where geomagnetics or geodisturbances come in. Is you have the like Sedona has the vortexes. That would be considered a geopathic stress area. Some people say they're healthy. Who knows? I don't know if they're healthy or bad.
So wait, what are you calling it? A board?
Geopathic stress, and that's when the stable north and south fields of the Earth are twisted or turned, or they're not specifically north and south. And so there's a whole study on geopathic stress that you're supposed to sleep with your head to the north and your feet to the south, because that's how our body's field is. So our head is north, our feet is south. So when you're sleeping in your bed, you want to be aligned with the static magnetic field of the Earth, because we have a magnetic field also that our heart generates.
Isn't there ways to remedy that? I mean, that's like feng shui and all that.
Kind of.
Because my house, I can't sleep that way. It's impossible.
Right. Yeah, some people can't. And the thing that I say about that is, just turn your bed and try it for a couple nights. If you really notice a difference, you might want to look into something. If you don't notice a difference, don't worry about it and move on with your life. I mean, there's a lot of other things to focus on, but that's just one. And I don't really know of any big studies on geopath. Just more like people like me, other people that have experienced and worked with people. One more thing you can try if you want.
There's something at the point of the mountain that's like that. I forgot what it's called though. They call it, well, I haven't heard that name, but there's something else there that there's like,
with the magnetic fields?
There's something, right there at the point. You know what the point of the mountain is?
I mean, I've heard of it.
Between Salt Lake.
It's where it kind of juts it, where people do hang gliding off.
Yes, that's the point of the mountain, and there's something interesting over there. But I can't remember what it is.
So the magnetic fields that we're talking about in the electrical wiring are alternating also like the electric field. They're going positive, negative, and they're flipping back and forth. And one thing where it gets really dangerous, if you have heavy metals in your body, high iron, those things will flip, they'll spin and they'll turn. So when you're in an alternating magnetic field going back and forth, everything in your body that's magnetic or metal is going to be doing the same thing.
So this is, okay, I just had a massive aha moment of this massive increase of childhood leukemia.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, for sure, in the blood.
And like blood, like cancers and stuff. Like, because that's increased like 30, some of the blood cancers have increased by 50% since the 70s. Yeah. Like, so that was just, oh my gosh, I just got goosebumps everywhere, because that's terrifying, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely. And I have some experiments I do. I have with magnets where I'll have you hold a magnet and I'll spin the magnet underneath and it's flipping and you can actually feel it in your hand.
Yeah.
That's what it's doing 120 times a second in our body. Wow. So all these microscopic heavy metals.
Wow. Okay.
So that's why the magnetic fields are so dangerous, because you can't block them and they're physically disturbing our body.
My son has silver teeth.
Yeah, so amalgams, any kind of metal in your body. And so if you turn those fields down to like 10 or 5, you'd start to feel it. But since they're vibrating at 120, it's just happening so fast.
Yeah. Okay.
So sleeping, being, living in magnetic fields are highly dangerous. And if you have any kind of magnetic fields that we test for, we need to fix those. Electric fields, it's really hard to get away from those. And if electric fields were extremely, extremely bad, everybody be gone out, because we're all surrounded by electric fields all the time. But they do cause stress. They do cause our bodies to be worn down. Yeah. They feel like there's something going on with their bodies all the time when we're in electric field.
Where does it manifest? In our mitochondria first, or what?
All throughout our whole body, all of our cells are being push-pulled. The electrons in our cells at the atomic level
are being pushed back. Like I'm just sitting here shaking, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 9 times out of 10, people with sleeping problems, if I can get them to turn their power off and sleep at night out of the electric field and away from the RF, 9 times out of 10 they say sleep like a baby now.
I could propose an experiment, that might work.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm always for
That's how I've done it in the past.
And
let's just experiment. Are you willing to experiment?
That's how I approach it with people. Look, don't spend the money and waste your time and do all this stuff, remodeling your house and moving around your rooms. Just try it a couple nights. Try turning the power off for a week at night when you go to bed. Just try it and see what the difference is.
Would it work if somebody's cells are kind of already freaked out?
For sure, because
you
your cells are going
to
be really happy with you. But sometimes it takes a couple nights for your body to realize, hey, I'm not, you know, the cortisol levels are up, and the body's like fight or flight mode, and you know, because they're getting this outside interference. So once all that goes away, and your body can actually relax and breathe, like, okay, we're good, all right, then it can get back to its other functions of healing and keeping us healthy.
Right.
Okay. Definitely. So that's magnetic, super dangerous, and you understand why?
Yes.
Why magnetic is dangerous, and then the electric, and why it's harmful, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's at the level of the magnetic fields.
What do they call them?
So this is all the electric, right?
Yep, that's all the electric.
Magnetic, you'll find more in...
Magnetic, if you have miswiring, or you find it at point sources. So anything that has a fan, when you turn the blender on, electric razors actually have pretty high magnetic fields. You know, but a lot of this stuff is cumulative. So you're shaving, well, you don't shave, you shave like I do, every once in a while.
So my husband shaves like immaculately.
Shaved every day, so, I mean, but you're doing, say you do it for 5 minutes a day. That's nothing compared to if you have, like, that lady, I don't like to say names, you know, but if you're sleeping on top of a magnetic field day in and day out, and you're a child where your cells are growing and reproducing, or you're sick and you're trying to get better, you know, so you're putting yourself in this magnetic field.
What about an MRI where you're, you know, 40
Are those really dangerous? They
yeah,
say they're not as dangerous.
Those are very high magnetic fields, and they'll ask you know, do you have teeth, metal in your teeth, do you have any kind of implants and stuff? But it's very, very high frequency, very high frequency. So this is 60 times positive, 60 times negative, which is 120. Those MRIs are in thousands and millions.
They always say that they're not as dangerous as an X-ray, but that's not true, right?
So X-ray has ionizing radiation, and it's for a split second. An MRI is non-ionizing. Do you know the difference between ionizing and non-ionizing? Okay, so, and this will kind of lead us. This will kind of lead us into RF, because this is a good thing to talk about. So we have electromagnetic frequencies, and the frequency is how many times it goes positive and negative as it's fluctuating back and forth. At the very low end, it's not moving at all, and that's like the static field of our Earth. Then we have electrical power, and it's starting to vibrate at 60 times a second. Okay, and then it moves up the scale, and you start to get into the AM radio station. That's tens of thousands, and then you get higher in the FM and CD and satellite, and then you start getting into the million range and the megahertz range, and you start getting into broadband, RF, and the low end of cell phone, 900 megahertz, and then you start getting up into Wi-Fi at 2.4 gigahertz, and that's microwave range. Now, when you get into gigahertz, we're talking about billions of times per second that's vibrating back and forth. And when you get into the microwave, and then you get into like satellite, like 24 gigahertz, and it starts moving up. And then when you get into the teeth, you start getting the visible light. But first you get into the infrared, you get the low infrared, and the near infrared, and then you get into visible light. And it's the same exact thing, it's just an electromagnetic field, and the magnetic field, part of it's going this way, and the electric field, part of it's going this way. They kind of work together and they're intertwined. So as an electric field is produced, so a magnetic field moving through matter will produce an electric field, and an electric field around matter will produce a magnetic field. So they kind of feed off each other, and that's how RF propagates through the air. At the low end, they're separate and they're not coupled together, because a wave at 60 hertz is like several thousand miles long, so it's hard for them to couple together. But when we're talking up in the gigahertz and more, we're talking millimeter range, so the waveform is a lot smaller. the time it takes to go positive and negative as it travels, it's only traveling in inches. So when we get into visible light spectrum, then we got like the ultraviolet after the light, and then you start going into X-ray, and then you start going into alpha, which is the radiation from nuclear, and then beta, and then gamma, and then cosmic. So by the time you go out here, it's vibrating so fast and so small and so powerful, it's unfathomable to even imagine how fast it's vibrating at that point. So they say that anything past the light spectrum, when our bodies interact with it, will actually knock the electrons out of its orbit in our cells, and that's what they call ionizing. So when it's ionizing, it actually is doing damage to our cells on an atomic level, in a really small level. Before that, it's not ionizing, but it's still doing a lot of damage. So that's kind of the big debate, is people say, well, you know, ionizing is harmful, that's proven, but non-ionizing won't do anything to you, it's not harmful. But people that believe that, I would challenge them to put their head in the microwave for a minute and then tell me that that doesn't harm them, because a microwave is non-ionizing radiation, and in fact it's the same frequency that our Wi-Fi and our Bluetooth and mostly those two big ones right there, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, all share that same frequency, 2.4 gigahertz. And the funny thing is 2.4 is the most damaging to our cells, and that's why they use it to heat up our food, because it is basically vibrating the cells so hard and rubbing them that they heat up.
Wow. Okay.
And so when you get these government standards come into play and say the cell phone range 10 million microwatts is the standard, the limit where they say it's safe, that's because that's when our skin and our body starts heating up. So at that level, our skin and our body starts heating up, and that's when they say, well, that's when it's starting to cause damage. So the argument isn't necessarily, is non-ionizing radiation bad for you, it's at what level is it bad for you. That's really the argument. And that's where kind of the gray zone is. And for me and my family, that level is going to be 1 or less than 1, 0, because I don't want to risk it. I don't want to use my kids as guinea pigs and find out 20 years from now that yes, this stuff scientifically is very harmful, just like cigarettes, just like lead, like asbestos, and now glyphosate, stuff that people like us already know is bad, but until the government has mountains and mountains and mountains of evidence and millions of dead people, they finally say, okay, this stuff is bad, let's move on to something else. So that's a personal choice that every person has to make. You know, and I don't like to get into debates with people that don't agree with it, because if you want to think like that, that's your free agency to think like that. But I know what facts I know, and I'm not going to let my kids buy it, or I'm going to eliminate my exposure as much as possible.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Perfect sense. Yep.
Okay. So radio frequency is much higher in the vibration range, and it has an electric and a magnetic field component mixed together, and they're coupled together because they're going so fast, they're vibrating so quick, they're kind of tied together. And so when we talk about radio frequency as EMF, I think that's probably one of the more common ones that people refer to, because they think about the cell phone, they think about their Bluetooth, they think about their wireless headset, they think about their laptop. All these things that are transmitting data wirelessly is what we refer to as RF, and that's radio frequency or radio fields. And so that is a whole separate type of EMF that has its own different way of measuring it. It has different effects on the body. But it's also one of the more harmful ones, as far as the World Health Organization and the International Organization of Cancer classified it as a class 2B carcinogen. In 2011. So
who said that?
The World Health Organization.
And you're saying that's what our cell phones are?
They classified RF. They said electromagnetic frequency, but if you read it on, then they kind of specify it more as that comes from cell phone usage. It has been known to cause cancer and brain cancer, and they list a couple different specific cancers. So that's something that's kind of in concrete that a lot of people aren't necessarily aware of, that it is kind of, except as the National Cancer Organization and the World Health Organization did identify that in 2011 as class 2B carcinogen.
So wireless stuff in general.
Wireless stuff in general.
Okay.
Yeah.
Class 2B
How do you-
carcinogen.
How do you use your cell phone? What do you do?
So I always put it on airplane mode, or I have a cool little device here that is kind of fun.
See, Dad doesn't like this because it's so overwhelming.
Right.
He just thinks, I'm just
So I have this in my,
and live.
I keep a couple of these around like my office and stuff, so I just plug this in.
Oh, that's cool.
And then you can make a phone call and you can put that down and you can keep it away
Because you don't
from
even
there,
want to touch
keep
it.
on the
That's
desk.
why you do that.
Yeah, the further away you can get, the better. So when it comes to
EMF in general, when I say EMF, I'm kind of grouping all of them. The first thing that we want to do to try to eliminate our exposure is to get rid of the source. So if I can turn this on airplane mode, I eliminated the source. If I'm expecting an important call and I can't turn off the source, I'll take this and I'll just put it across the room and I'll just have it on. So right now, the second thing I try to do is distance. Right, so distance myself.
What's a safe distance?
Further the better.
Okay, so because when I'm laying with her, she's sleeping and I'm working on my phone and it's about a foot away from her. I always try to keep it away from her, but it's a foot. That's not far enough.
That's one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to get the meters out and we're going to make phone calls and we're going to show what the levels are at different levels in comparison to the background, in comparison to the Wi-Fi. And we're going to see what the important things are, where the dangers are.
Okay.
Because a lot of people freak out about a cell phone that's maybe even 100 yards from them. But what they don't realize is that power coming out of the cell phone to here is transmitting the same power that cell phone is, because that cell phone has to transmit back to the tower. So that the cell phone will regulate itself and put out just enough power to get back to the cell phone tower. So if you're far away from a cell phone tower, it's actually worse. Because now your phone has to work that much harder.
If it has lower bars, it's
If it has lower bars,
harder on your body,
it's
right?
maxing out its power.
So those little
Yeah,
stickers
I knew
people put
that.
on their phones, is that just causing it to transmit more power?
So about those stickers, okay, from a scientific standpoint, it's full of crap, because EMF is around us all over the place. It's like a swimming pool. So if you're about to go swimming and I didn't want it to get wet, and I said, here, let me put this sticker on your back.
Yeah.
Go ahead and go swim, and now you're not going to get wet.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. So from a physics standpoint, they don't do anything, and I've measured them every time someone has one. I do a measurement and I show you. Put it on, put it off. It's just a measurement. It doesn't do anything. What it does do though is that if someone buys it and they put it on and in their mind it makes them feel better, I do give some credit to the placebo effect. And I don't discount that at all. So that's why I hate to really talk too negatively about them, because if it makes you feel better in your mind and it's doing something,
But
scientifically it's bogus.
What about covers? Scientific.
So that was the next thing I was going to say. So the third thing, so I'm expecting that phone call. It calls, I answer it. So they do have those shields that you can put on, and they have a little hole in the top. But as long as the shield is between you and the device, it will help a little bit.
Okay.
A little bit. I've done some readings where they do block a little bit of stuff, but not a lot.
Okay.
And so shielding is the last thing. So the first thing is eliminate the source. The second thing is distance. And the third thing is shielding. So the last thing I like to do is shielding. So if we get in a situation where someone is extremely sensitive, then we'll have to go into some shielding of their house. There's shielding paint, there's shielding blinds, like fabric we can put up. You can sleep in a sleep canopy, but that's the last resort. I find that 95% of the radiation we're being exposed to is being produced by us in our own home. So that cell tower that's even 100 yards away is nothing compared to what we're doing to ourselves.
So I didn't specifically enroll Tennyson at a school because there was a cell phone tower like right outside the school. So not a big deal.
Not necessarily a big deal. If you enrolled her in a school that didn't have a cell phone tower, but they have Wi-Fi, and they have Bluetooth, and they have cordless keyboard,
that's worse.
10 times worse, 100 times worse, 1,000 times worse.
Yeah, okay.
And we'll take
nothing you
measurements.
can do to shield it at all.
You can shield it, yeah. In fact, they even make clothing.
They make stuff you can put under your carpet. We can absolutely shield. We basically turn it into a survey board. We can connect it will bounce off for it.
Yeah.
The other misconception is the wall power, you don't necessarily have to have it grounded. Grounding is so that you don't induce an electric field. So the grounding is totally about the electric field. It's about getting those electrons back to the earth.
So the paint that is supposed to protect people from this kind of stuff, is that real?
Yeah.
Okay, the paint
But
does
it,
work.
so when we're talking about magnetic fields, will paint work on magnetic fields?
So,
No. Why?
okay. Because that's the current
'Cause the-
coming in.
Because it'll go
Nothing
right
blocks
through
the
it.
field.
Yeah,
Oh,
there's nothing
okay.
that will block a magnetic field. So if you put up paint, it's not going to do anything for a magnetic field.
Mhm.
If you put up paint but you don't ground it, will that block an electric field?
No.
No, because the electric field wants to get back to
Mm,
ground. That's
okay.
live electrons.
Okay.
So if you put up paint and you ground it, now
Mm.
you're going to block the electric field from the outside coming in. An electric field on the inside, half of it's going to go this way, half it's going to shoot to the paint and go back to earth.
Okay.
So radio frequency, if you do shield your house, or you are in a canopy, it is extremely important that you do not use any RF devices inside your house, because it's going to bounce around like a microwave and it's going to exponentiate the problem.
Okay. Alrighty.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And even these low E glasses, it's not good to stand by those and talk, because the signal's going to hit those and then bounce back to you, so you're going to get
Okay.
the signal twice.
Okay. Alrighty.
So a lot of people think stand by the window, you're going to get better reception. Not true. Stand by the wall, because the window is actually blocking, and I'm talking about low E glass, and it has the little metal particles in it.
Mm-hmm.
It'll actually block the RF pretty good.
Okay.
And we can do some experiments and show open the window and close.
Okay.
So airplane mode blocks everything?
Airplane
Well, it
mode is
stops
meant to,
transmission.
to stop transmission.
So that stops radio frequency, right? That
Yep.
stops that.
Yeah.
So we're not dealing with electric fields or magnetic fields with a cell phone, or
Right.
are we?
Nope, we're not.
Not at
Unless
all.
it's charging.
Just plug it in.
Unless it's charging.
then you
Okay.
have an electric field
All right.
that's coupled but see, it turns it from
Awesome.
an electric field into a DC current going up the cord, but you'll
Okay.
just have some of it coming up the current. But yeah,
All right.
not a big worry. You'll have a magnetic field from the adapter that's plugged into the wall,
Okay.
because you have a little transformer.
But that won't.
That
go
won't
the
travel
power
up,
line.
nope, that will
Okay.
just radiate in a circle, and the further away you get, the less it dies off pretty quick.
Okay.
Within 2 feet, it's pretty safe. If you have, so some people maybe have an office and you have a bunch of those stuff plugged in and you're hanging out, you're resting your feet on top of those, you're gonna have a really high magnetic field on your feet. You're not, the feet's not gonna like you for that.
Okay.
So you wanna push, keep all that stuff. Distance is big. Can't eliminate distance.
Okay.
Is really big.
All right.
Shielding is last.
I'm anxious to see what this house test says, because I've had a really bad feeling about it for a long time. Like,
Well-
so I'm hoping you'll like ease my stress around it.
What
Like,
we're
I
gonna do
really-
is we're gonna teach you how to avoid it and where it's coming from, and so
Okay.
you can manage it,
All right,
is what we're gonna do.
let's do
And
it.
so those 3 things, do you understand the differences between the 3? Did that?
Yes.
Yes.
explain that good?
Yeah.
Okay.
This much I do now,
Yeah.
because it's enough for today.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll just have Tristan break it down for
I mean,
us.
that's a really quick crash course on like
That's
a whole
perfect.
bunch of information.
That was perfect, thank
Yeah.
you. And I
But-
filmed that whole thing, is that okay?
Yeah, there's still one more thing
Okay.
that is really big on the internet, a lot of people talk about, that is called dirty electricity. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So dirty electricity is a big thing, and they talk about putting filters in. All dirty electricity is a component of an electric field. So the electric field is created from the power lines. So dirty electricity just means that that power line, that smooth sine wave, is not smooth anymore. It has spikes in it, fuzzy, it's not in
Gotcha.
phase. And so when that happens, some people are more sensitive to that, but it can also transmit further out. So those spikes that jump up can now, instead of shoot 6 feet out, they can shoot 10 feet out or 12 feet out. And instead of being a smooth push-pull type motion, it's a sharp spike. So it reacts harder with our bodies.
So that
Okay.
brings us to light bulbs then, isn't that what different light bulbs do?
Yep, CFLs are really bad for dirty electricity. Switching mode power supplies are really bad for dirty electricity. Inverters, like on, if you have solar panels and you have an inverter, those are really bad for dirty electricity. All those things create a component of the electric field that make it more dangerous.
Lindsay Ploger says you're her cousin.
Oh yeah.
Lindsay, she's watching you right now.
Oh, is she?
Yeah.
Hi,
So you want to tell her hi? She's like, oh my gosh, that's my cousin.
Oh, that's awesome.
Small world.
Yeah.
Secrets out to the family now. They
Oh
know
yeah.
what you do.
She knows I'm a tinfoil hat guy.
That's great. That's great.
Well, she's watching.
So does that make sense with the way
Yeah.
that dirty electricity is on the line?
Yeah.
And so some people are more sensitive to that. So I'm kind of mixed emotion about the things you plug into the wall.
that are filters, because you plug those in and they'll help create a cleaner power, but you trade off and they create a magnetic field at the source and then going back on the line back to the sub panel. So if I do install those and want to help the customer decrease the dirty power, I always install those at the sub panel, as far away from the living as possible. So if the sub panel's over here and we install a bunch over here and we have them running through the floor, we're going to induce a magnetic field.
Sorry, I'm dumb. A sub panel, is that like the
sub
box?
So you have the main panel that comes in and then it kind of splits out, and you have, that's where your breakers are at.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So we need to move ours.
I don't know where
So
it is.
people who
Where
build
is
their
it?
homes and they put in
No, our boxes, our side
the flooring
Those
boxes,
things?
we need to move those by the
kind of heat of some sort. What does that do?
So the radiant heat,
Oh yeah.
that's actually really good, but that's more of like an air quality issue. So I definitely recommend radiant heat for better
it's not
air
electrical.
quality. No, because what they do is they heat up water or propylene glycol mixture and they run that through the floor. And so that's just tubes and water. So there's absolutely no magnetic field or
Ours
electric
house
field.
is not. We don't have that. No,
Well,
that's
bathroom?
different.
Oh,
yeah.
that's something else.
But I was thinking of the neighbors. I think that's probably what they put in radiant floor heating.
Yeah, I definitely recommend using those.
Similar question. The what is it called? Geothermal
Oh, where they dig
power. Yeah, where
in the
they
ground?
you know you
Yeah,
get your
again, so those
heating
are
from
good too. That's just the pipe that's going through the water.
Yeah, so
or
so
the
no
ground.
concerns there in terms of
No concerns there.
Okay, awesome.
Uh-huh.
So if you had the
No.
choice between that, and I know they're different, but that and solar panels, go with that one.
So the solar panels are good in itself. It's the way that you invert the power from the DC to the AC.
Is there different ways
And there's
you can do
cleaner
that?
ways to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is.
What would you pick?
Not really have any specific brands in mind, but if I was using solar panel, I would just keep it in DC mode and then I'd use my lighting for 12 volt, just like you would in an RV or houseboat or something.
But between thermal and solar.
Thermal.
Thermal for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
good to know.
Yeah, well,
I think
solar
it's
is
very
useless
pricey.
for
Yeah,
us.
solar is useless here.
Thermal.
Yeah.
Because we're in
that's
between the
what we use
mountains.
out here.
So it's probably really bright and sunny in the valley, and it's still dark out here.
Oh no, it's
Well,
been
unless it's
very
smoggy
dark.
down there.
No, it's cloudy at home.
Yeah, it's also
Yeah.
So, alrighty.
So does that make sense with all the different fields, all the different categories?
Yes.
So dirty electricity can also come, a big one is dimmers. So if you have dimmers, you definitely have dirty electricity.
Really?
Got lots of those.
And
dimmer.
In our
CFLs and
bathroom.
fluorescents and
So what kind of light bulbs do you
LEDs.
like?
Just regular incandescent, the old
They're
school
really
regular
hard to find
incandescent.
these days, right?
Yeah, lightbulbs.com, you can get them. Those are by
Do
far
they come
the
in
best.
different sizes
So
and
no
shapes and
dimmers.
so
Uh-huh.
forth?
Yeah.
Lightbulb.com.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pressure and exposure.
I would like to switch back
Yes.
as I can, if I don't create too much havoc.
Yeah, and so I have an oscilloscope we're going to hook up to the power of your house, and it's going to show us a visible graph of
Cool.
what the electricity looks like running through your walls.
That's awesome.
And we're also going to measure it as it couples onto you,
Wow.
and then we're going to measure body voltage on you in the bed. And so we're going to do fun stuff now.
Cool. I'm
So-
excited.
That's pretty much it on the.
Do
Great.
you have a card or any information or a place I can go to?